Welcome everybody to today's webinar, Critical Factors for Project Success. This is a series of webinars that we've been presenting for free. We'll be running them all year, one per month, and we've done it last year as well for the last few months. This one's being presented by Morley Selver. Morley earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering in 1973 from the University of Manitoba. He's worked in industry with and for consultants, and has had his own consulting business and has over 25 years of experience in industrial plant project engineering. His industrial experience includes operations and maintenance, research and development, management of small to medium-sized plant projects, construction management of large industrial projects, mechanical installation of heavy industrial equipment, commissioning and startup of industrial plants, and plant management. He's also worked in operating pulp and paper mills, oil refineries, on North Slope oil projects, board plants, and the recycling industry in various locations across Canada and the USA. Today, I would like to welcome Morley Selver to this call. Morley, good morning.
Thank you, Kevin. How's everybody doing? So welcome to this webinar on critical factors for project success. Next.
I do have a quick announcement. I do have a quick announcement. I do have a quick announcement before we proceed.
Okay.
Everybody, as Morley goes through the presentations, we'll be doing a Q&A session at the end. So as you go through, if there's questions that arise, if you're in the web interface, there's a little questions window. You can type your questions in the questions window, and we will repeat them during the Q&A session and provide answers at that time. So don't forget them. Just type them into the window, and they won't get lost. Okay, Morley, proceed.
Okay, so go to the second slide there.
Yep.
So everyone likes gold. Okay, they like the feel, the look, and the value of it. So in my younger days, I used to manage an urban gold mine in Toronto. And no, it wasn't a hard rock mine or an open pit mine, but it was a small facility that we had in Mississauga, just west of the Toronto airport. We were located in the back of the Xerox building. Now, I know you know what it's like. You go into work one day and there's a new coffee machine there. And I know some of you may sit there and ponder, what happened to the old one? Well, this is what used to happen to them. Next. What was going on was Xerox had thousands of old coffee machines that they did not know what to do with. And when we started up the plant, we had 3 warehouses full of these old coffee machines. Next. What we were doing was running the old coffee machines through a shredder. Xerox paid us $50 for each machine to destroy it. For each machine, we would remove the glass, the toner cartridge, the diffuser oil, which was in some of the larger ones, and the serial number. We then dumped them into a shredder. And the shredder had a plate on the bottom with like 3/8-inch holes in it. This meant that to get out of the shredder, the pieces had to be 3/8 of an inch or less. The material came out of the shredder onto a conveyor belt. It took the material through a whole separation process where we separated out the steel, the aluminum, the copper, the brass, the plastic, etc. The material is collected in these 4x4 boxes, which you can see in the bottom of your screen there. And we sold this stuff to the recyclers. Along with the material was dust, which was collected in these boxes as well. This dust was then sent to a smelter in Noranda, Quebec. There they did an assay on the dust looking for the gold, the silver, platinum, palladium, and they paid us accordingly. The $50 was, plus the assay, could only, it was enough to pay to keep the lights on. Where the real money was in the old 386 and 486 computers. Next. So this is a picture of a 486 chip. And you can see the gold wires that are attached to the chip. There's also a picture of a memory chip there as well. Okay? As the technology was changing and the computers were being upgraded at schools, they didn't know what to do with the old ones. So they just put them in any old storage room they had. And this is what we were looking for. We had a couple of trucks that went around to the schools and took them off their hands. We ran these computers through the plant, and out of a ton of computers, we could get 3 ounces of gold, plus the silver, platinum, and palladium. The plant could run 10 to 12 hours in an 8-hour shift. 10 to 12 tons in an 8-hour shift. And the gold those days was about $300 an ounce. Also in this picture was a picture of a video board. And one of our suppliers had a small plant where he could cyanide wash the circuit boards. The cyanide would dissolve the gold, and then he would boil off the cyanide and recover the gold. While we were doing this, the technology was changing, and it's still changing. I left that company in the mid-year 2000, and we were getting material that had less and less precious metals in it. Next. Here's a comparison of a 486 chip to my 2-year-old iPod. 2/3 of that iPod is battery. There's very little value in the iPod. There may be some rare earth, but that's a whole nother process. The point of all this is as the technology is changing, the business plans and models have to change accordingly. In this case, it didn't, and the last indication I can find of them in business is 2003. Xerox has even moved out of the building, and I don't know if the plant is still in the back of the building. I mean, look at the size of the Xerox coffee machines you have now. So there's very little technology or precious metals, that kind of stuff in them. And, okay, but when you start looking at this, with all the technology changes, and they are changing rapidly, the basics of project management do not change. I started managing projects in the 70s, and projects are managed the same way today. Sure, there's some new twists and turns, but the basics are still the same. The technology allows you to collect, store, and analyze data faster and easier, but the basics of how you manage the projects is still the same as when I started, and will be the same when you retire. It's almost like the project management basics will be there for be the same for time immemorial. Next. This is a question I ask in all my workshops, and I want you to think back into your career to the best project manager you've known. I want to know how many names come to mind, and what are the characteristics. So think about it, and you have a little chat thing on the bottom of your screen there, and I'll just ask you a few questions here when we come back. So using the chat feature, how many names come to mind? Is it 10? Is it 7? 5? 4? 3? I can think of 3, not counting myself. 2? Or even 1. But most people know 1 at least. Right. Did anybody say anything on the chat thing?
One person said the number 1. That was Daniel.
Okay. Yeah. What are some of the characteristics of these project managers? Does anybody know anything? Right? Did anybody have anything? Okay.
The word
so
the word tough comes to mind.
Well, that's a different one. I haven't heard that one before. But yeah, you have to be decisive, right? And you don't play around. So next. So when I ask this question, here are typical answers I get. Okay, the guy's a good communicator. Right? He's well organized. He knows what he has to do right now, and he knows what's coming along, and he's got his team organized. He's a good listener. Right? He understands the big picture. He knows what the vision is. What are we trying to do? Where are we headed here? He's an inspiring leader. He's a team player. He's a good motivator. If you want to motivate people, you have to change your style to match the personality of the person you are dealing with. He manages his time well. He delegates work effectively. He's technically competent. And he rarely gets flustered. So when you look at all of these, okay, you notice that the technical skill is a very minor in importance. And this is the only characteristics you've been trained in. Next. This points out that you have to work with and lead a team of people, and that it is a human resource that is between you and project success. Next. This means that the important skills that we need are not those in which we're being trained. So we understand that behavior is very, very important if you want to lead your team of people. And everything you went to university for, your technical stuff, is very, very minor. Next, here's a study that shows exactly that. Okay? So when you look at this study, right, your university training is just a small part of your learning. And this is why organizations are looking for people with the soft skills or how to work with human resource. And you have to do that as a project manager. Next, here's another study that basically says the same thing. So, to be a great project manager and have successful projects, you need to develop your people skills. Next. Everyone has seen the periodic table of elements from high school days. Well, here is the periodic table of project managers' competent elements. If you want to become a super-duper project manager, you will have to learn about and understand all of these competence elements. The yellow are the financial elements, the purple are the planning and control elements, and the green are the human resource elements. Next. If you go to this web page that's shown there, the ICBC3, you can download that for free, and it will explain what all these competence elements are. When you are working on a project, every piece of paper that crosses your desk fits into one of these boxes. When working on a project, no matter what role you have, you should take advantage of the opportunity to learn as much as you can about all these competence elements. Next, I want to go over some other critical factors that can have an effect on your project success and workload. You should keep these critical factors in mind with everything you do on your projects. These are common sense, but there is always the tendency to ignore them. Ignoring them can bring you nothing but headaches and problems. Next. The first one is you have to treat all your projects as if they will lead to a legal court case. You just don't know if and when your project will end up in a lawsuit. It may not be you that causes the problem. It could easily be someone else or some other event happens and all of a sudden there's a lawsuit. This also applies to claims. What this means is that you need to keep good records, meticulous notes, do your daily activity report, write and store minutes of meetings. When it comes to lawsuits, the party with the most information wins, and the other side always assumes that the opposition cannot prove anything. Your project procedures are set up to protect you in case of a lawsuit or claim, so follow them. When the people on the other side know you have complete records filed away, they will cut down on frivolous claims. If you are into a lawsuit, your notebooks and emails will be subpoenaed, and you will have to defend your comments. You have to be very careful about what you put in them. You do not put anything in them that could go against you in a lawsuit or a claim. If you have contentious issues, they should be discussed in face-to-face meetings. It is so easy to send an email, but they can get you into a great amount of trouble. I mean, look what's going on in the news today. I mean, look at all the stuff that went on with the Democratic Party and WikiLeaks and all this kind of stuff, and all the problems with the emails that they had. The same applies to equipment failure. If you have a failure and an insurance claim is made, can you prove the equipment was installed correctly and the operator and maintenance personnel trained? There have to be records to prove this, otherwise you could lose a claim. In my workshops, I go through the whole setup of forms that you have to fill in to do these. Next, have someone else take minutes for you. When you are the chairman of a meeting, have an associate take minutes for you. That way you are able to concentrate on the conversation rather than the minutes. This keeps the flow of the meeting moving along as you do not have to stop and write something down. Take subject matter experts with you when you need to. I have a degree in civil engineering, and if it's discussing electrical issues, I would take an electrical engineer with me. At some meetings, you want a witness, and your minute taker can be that person. An example of that would be a bid meeting with contractors or vendors. Next, do not depend on your memory. When working on projects, a lot of information could cross your desk and activities happen. In order to keep everything straight, you should not be trying to remember what happened and when, as it just won't work. I mean, see the lawsuit issue above. You should be keeping a notebook or daily journal. You need to record the important things. And you need to record them now, not sit down and do it on the weekend after, a few days after it's happened. It's got to be done for credibility purposes. It has to be done the same day. And of course, the older you get, the worse your memory becomes. Next. We look at public speaking and technical writing. If you want to make project management a career, you should take some type of public speaking course. You may have to present your project case to upper management. You never know. And you may have to speak off the cuff at any point. If something serious happens on your project, you may have to speak to the news media. And the most important thing to do is not say anything that could make your employer look bad. Everyone has seen people who are poor speakers, and it is very, very painful to watch. somewhere along the line, everyone should take a technical writing course. You have all kinds of documents to be produced, and you have to be clear and concise in as few words as possible. You have to get your point across when writing letters, reports, tender documents, etc. As an example, next, here's a sample of a clause from a contract. The question becomes, what does promptly mean? In this contract, there were 16 instances of the word promptly. That means there are 16 different meanings for the same word. And basically, this contract was written by lawyers for lawyers. Anything that is vague and ambiguous is nothing but trouble. So you always have to read your documents. Is it vague, ambiguous? Okay, you've got to make it clear, black and white. Next, abbreviations and acronyms. Okay, the abbreviations and acronyms, they have to be spelled out somewhere in the document. Otherwise, the document is useless. I have seen memos full of acronyms with no definition. Those ones go in the garbage. I did a workshop recently where different departments each had their own meaning for the same acronym. Okay? And that's nothing but confusion for the whole team, for the whole company, basically. The above little quote there about TLA, I mean, that's meaningless until I mentioned that TLA means three-letter acronyms. On the dates, you don't know if this is the 10th of June or the 6th of October. Right? Depends on what country you're in. Right? Between Canada and the U.S. is this different. So you have to be very, very careful when you're dealing outside of Canada or outside of your country with someone else. How do they do the dates? Because if they're different, you've got to be very, very careful with your schedules. You have to make sure that when you buy something from somebody, the dates on the schedule are the same dates that you require and not something different. And in these cases, I always like to write out the month. Next, emails. You know, some people like to print out their emails so they can read them later on. And when you print out an email, you look at it and the formatting is all the same and it's just all words and it's difficult to pick something out. So what you do is if you print off an email and you want to try and determine what the subject matter is, you write across the bottom what the subject of that email is. And then all you have, if you have a stack of 5 or a dozen or something like that, you're just flipping through the bottom pages and looking for what you're looking for. Right? With emails, you don't want to be forwarding threads because something could be in there that could affect you in a lawsuit. And a lot of people just forward threads. Right? You might have one with like 5 threads in it or something like that. Somebody could be calling your boss names and you forward it on to him. And so you always want to take a look at it and edit them. Don't just willy-nilly forward them on. And you have to be careful that the ball is not in the court. Just because you send an email to somebody doesn't mean they're going to answer it. I mean, look at the emails you get. You get 50 a day or something like that. And you sit there and you just pick through and you say, oh, I'll answer this one, I'll answer that one, I'll answer that one. And you might answer 10 out of the 50. And somebody's sitting there waiting for you to answer one that's very, very important. So just because you send an email, the ball is not in the court. If you want somebody to answer it, what you do is you pick up the phone and you say, hey, I just sent you an email. I need an answer to it. Go find it. Okay? So this is what you have to do. If you have a team of people, you've got to make sure that your designers and your team members understand this. Okay? Just don't send off an email and you come around 3 weeks later saying, hey, you can answer this. And the guy says, oh, no, I'm just still waiting for an answer to the email. And you forget it. Once the day is gone, it's not likely the email is going to get answered. Next. Meetings. You always start your meetings on time. If you're on a construction site, right, meeting rooms are at a premium. And it's very, very important. You start the meetings on time and you end them on time because there's always somebody standing outside the door trying to get into that meeting room. So sometimes we call meetings and you show up and there's nobody there. Well, if that's the case, you're always on time. Give them 5 minutes, write on the board, I was here at 2 p.m., sign your name, and go back to work. If we're trying to make sure that people show up, there's different methods, right? We lock the door so nobody can get in after the appointed time. Last one in has to write the minutes. And I have this saying that you're looking at there. I always put this in my minutes, right? And it just basically tells people what you think of them if they're late for meetings all the time. And the other thing is you always want to be on time because you never know, somebody may have bought in donuts. Next. Do not panic. Okay. Sometimes you feel like you're in over your head, right? and you start panicking, you start running around, you start putting out fires, and that's all you're doing. And you get nothing done, right? Because decisions made in haste are going to be bad decisions. So you don't want to be panicking. You want to be fast, you want to be steady. You want to complete the task as far as you can go, note where you stop, and go on to the next task. Right? So, you know, if you're very, very busy, you're like in startups and these kinds of things, it can become very, very difficult, and the tendency is to panic. And you have to keep in mind, okay, when someone comes to you with a problem that requires an immediate decision, they've probably been thinking of it for a while, right? And they all of a sudden they want you to think, give me an answer right now. So you should take your time to address the issue. Is it really a problem that needs an immediate answer? You have to be very, very careful about this. Next. You have to be honest, you have to be fair, you have to be ethical. Right? Honest. If it's your fault, you say so. You can't go blaming team members when it's your fault. If you blame them, they just won't work for you. And if it's your fault and you blame a contractor, all he does is he goes around to your boss and has kicked off the job. So you have to get people to work for you, so you've got to be honest. Your mistakes, say so, move on. You have to be fair, and you have to be fair with others. You expect them to be fair with you. You don't want to get taken advantage of, but you want to be fair with people. You have to be ethical. Right? So when you manage a project, what's basically happened is someone's coming along and giving you, say, $5 or $10 million, and they expect you to manage it wisely for them. To do that, you have to have a clear conscience. You need to be able to sleep at night. As always happens when you're in control of the money, someone will try to influence your decisions. They do this by providing you with gifts and money, anything that could sway a decision in their favor. So just think, a contractor gives you and your family a $10,000 Caribbean cruise, and 3 weeks after you come back, there's a large questionable change order on your desk. If you are beholden to someone, it is difficult to say no. Therefore, you cannot get into any compromising situations. Your job is to protect the owner's interest or your employer's interest. On every project, you will have to beat up a contractor or a vendor at some point. Right? You can only do that if you have a clear conscience. So use your common sense. You do not want to be taking anything of a contractor or vendor. Some people take nothing more than a cup of coffee. All companies have ethics policies, and they should be followed. One of the big issues are gifts from contractors and vendors. And this is the time of the year when you start getting these kinds of things. Right? So your company should have a gift policy, and you need to follow it. If you get a gift you do not want, you can raffle it off, give it to a charity, whatever. Just don't get in a position where you feel you are beholden to someone. You have to keep in mind that project management is not a popularity contest. All your dealings should be considered as a business decision. Like somebody said before, you have to be tough. Next, you have to keep your supervisor informed. Like you, your supervisor does not like surprises. You need to advise them on the things that could be a potential problem. Information is passed up to management through reports. The reports have to be accurate reflection of what is transpiring on your project. This includes good news and bad news. Management are making decisions based on the information they receive from you. If you're not giving them accurate information, they could be making bad decisions, and you don't want to go there. Next, this little screen beam with the boxes on the left shows you where you fit in. You are on the bottom, passing information upwards in the organization. They're depending on you to support them, and if you fail, all the boxes fall down. Do not procrastinate if the project is screwed up, and you hope the problem will go away, because it won't. You have to report what is going on. Some people say that good news is bad news early, and that's how management take a look at a lot of this stuff. Next. So when it comes to projects, this is the big picture that you have to deal with. Every project has this scope, schedule, budget, resources relationship. And resources can be people, equipment, materials, funding. These all come out of a fixed pool, and they can affect your project. So for a fixed scope, you have a schedule, a budget, and resources that match. You have a balance between them all. If one of these changes, you have to go back and look at the other three to see what else has changed. If there are changes, then you have to write change orders, whatever, to get everything back in balance. And you have to keep this relationship in mind every day, as requests can and do affect this balance. Next, as an example, we had a project to replace 2 steam-driven emergency generators. Working our way through the project lifecycle, we decided to install 14 separate diesel generators, 1 for each unit, in a refinery. So we put our funding documents together and asked for $8 million. Well, management looked at it and said, no, can't give you that. I'll give you $3 million. We only need 3 generators right now. So here we had everything in balance, but the resource, the funding, changed. So we had to go back and redevelop the scope, the schedule, and the budget based on the limited resource of funding. This type of decision-making goes on all the time. The point is, you have to keep the scope, schedule, budget, resource, relationship, and balance throughout the project. You should look at this for every decision you need to make. How will the decision affect my project? And of course, you know from your own being in the design office, you have a limited pool of designers. Equipment's late, material you can't get. These all have an effect on your project, on your scope, schedule, budget, resources. Next, for every project you have, you'll have a scope, schedule, budget, resource relationship for each one. They are all independent, but the relationship still applies to each. So you have to keep track of this. Next, management has the same relationship. For your facility or whatever business you're in, there could be a capital budget of, say, $350 million that the engineering superintendent manages. For this $250 million, there is a matching scope, schedule, budget, resources for it. All facilities will have a yearly capital budget or project list showing how the money will be allocated. They will also have the 5-year tenure plans for major work that has to be done. This is where the pool of funding comes into play. Management has to prioritize how the money will be spent. If I give this project funding, I can't give another one funding. So which project is more important? If you work for a company with several facilities, say in North America, there's going to be a vice president of North American project or something like that, and he will have a much larger budget, but for that budget, there will be a scope, schedule, budget, resources, relationship for it, and everything will be in balance. I recall one of the big oil companies had a worldwide capital budget of $7 billion. Somewhere there was a piece of paper with the scope, schedule, budget, relationship on it. Next. This is a relationship that drives what happens when there is a bump in the middle of the night. When something like this happens, the manager has to come up with the money to fix it. What they will do is go back to the project list and reprioritize the projects. To get the scope, schedule, budget, resources back in balance, they will cut projects. This is why you may be managing a borderline profitable project and all of a sudden it gets canceled. The money from your project goes back into the funding pool to fix the unplanned event. Next, so just to wrap up, if I can here, what we talked about was as technology changed, your basic principles of project management changed. The behaviors are very, very important to you. You have to learn how to deal with people because you're leading a team of people. And we talked about lawsuits. Okay? And you never know what's going to happen. Okay? And so you have to be prepared. This is why we follow project procedures. And you know from probably from working, you know that the time you bypass a procedure, it comes back to bite you. So you don't want to be doing that kind of thing. We took a look at taking minutes, have someone take minutes for you. We said do not depend on your memory, right? Because as you get older, it gets worse, and you just can't do it. You have to be, if you want to be credible, I wrote it today, the day it happened. Do not take a look at public speaking and technical writing. Right? If it's vague or ambiguous, it spells trouble. So you got to go through all the documents you have that are going out, make sure that they say they're clear, that nobody can get confused on it. And even then, people will get confused. So you have to be very, very careful. We looked at abbreviations and acronyms. We talked about emails. The ball is not in the court. Just because you send an email to somebody doesn't mean the guy's going to answer it. If it's important, you phone the person and ask them to take a look for it and answer it. We take a look at meetings, right? Always be on time. You never know when somebody's brought donuts. Do not panic, right, when you feel you're in over your head. Again, decisions made in haste are going to be bad decisions. And like I say, the guy who shows up with a problem that's got to be solved immediately, he's thought about it. You should take the time to think about it as well. You have to be honest. You have to be fair. You have to be ethical. Okay, no compromising situations. You got to be able to sit down and beat up on a contractor or a vendor, whatever it is, and you can't be beholden to anybody. You have to keep your supervisor informed. Otherwise, the management will be making bad decisions, and if you're not keeping the right information, you're procrastinating, I don't want to tell them, this kind of things, it's going to be nothing but trouble for you. So you don't want to go there. And we looked at the scope, schedule, budget, resources, relationship. And you have to keep this in mind on your projects every day. When somebody wants something, how is it going to affect things? So those are the critical factors that you need to keep in mind on a daily basis. They may seem innocuous. However, you ignore them at your peril, as they can have a disastrous effect on you and your project. And thanks for attending. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Morley. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed some of those success factors and some of the stories you shared with us. Okay, attendees, if you have questions that you would like to ask Morley, please type them into the questions box or the questions window. We have one coming in already. This is, could you explain what Murphy's Law is?
Yeah. If you plan, whatever you plan for, it won't work out that way. Basically what it amounts to. There's all kinds of things that go wrong. And whatever you expect, something else always happens. And you have to be prepared for it. And projects are all full of Murphy's Law all over the place. So,
excellent.
That answers the question.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, I've heard it said that whatever can go wrong will. That's one definition of Murphy's Law. Excellent. Any other questions?
Yeah, that's why you have to keep...
Go ahead, Morley.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Please type them into the questions window. If you are calling from an audio-only interface and do not have access, I think there's a combination star something that you can type. It might have been explained to you when you joined in. Or if you are on the web interface and aren't able to type it in, but you'd wish to ask your question, you can press the raise hand key, and I should be able to unmute just your line so you can ask your question verbally. Okay, I don't see, nobody's raising their hands, and let me just check for questions here. Somebody asked, will recording of this presentation be made available? Absolutely, yes. This will be made available. In fact, we will be posting this up to YouTube, and we'll make it available to everybody. Any final questions? Okay. Well, we finished a little bit early today. That's good. We can get you back to work. You do earn half a PDU for today's presentation. So that will be the information on how to claim that will be emailed out to everybody who attended this call. If you are a member of IIVA, you can get half a CDU, and there's some other recertification credits that are optional. We'll include those out in the email. So thank you very much. Morley, it looks like there's some thank yous and comments in the question window. People are saying a very insightful presentation. Thank you. It looks like they've enjoyed the presentation. So thank you very much for today. And goodbye, everyone. And I just want one quick announcement. Our next webinar will be on January 11th. That's Wednesday, January 11th. It's free from noon till 1 p.m. It's called All PMOs Are Not the Same, Exploring the Many Functions of a PMO. And on Thursday, February 2nd, There's one called Exploring Agile Contracts, Fixed Price, Time and Materials, and Hybrid Options. You can find out more about both of those at procept.com. That's Procept.com. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye for now.